Deschutes County Board of Commissioners meeting for 1 p.m. Monday, May 24th, 2021. At this time, please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, so this is our Monday afternoon meeting. We'll get right into action items. So legislative update. We were having an update on Friday mornings with invitation to legislators, and we discussed it last week to just have the legislative update during these times, fit them in. The legislative session is changing also. It's getting to work sessions mostly.
Thank you, Commissioner DeBonne. For the record, Whitney Hale, Administrative Services. We're here for the board's check-in on legislative matters, as Commissioner DeBonne mentioned. I believe we have Phil Shoyers joining us on Zoom. So he represents PAC West, which is the county's lobbyist, and will be happy to provide a session update. I also know that Mr. Shoyers provided an update to our legislative delegation, and it sounds like many of them had conflicting committees at the 1 p.m. start time, so I don't know that we'll see legislators joining us today, but Mr. Shoyers is on the line.
Yes, Commissioners, this is Phil Shoyers, and I just want to confirm everyone can hear me okay?
Yes, there we go. Switching gears.
All right.
You may be able to see us also, I think, or we'll see.
Should, yes.
There we go.
Oh, perfect. All right. Thank you. So just starting off with a brief political update on the political tone of session thus far. Last week, since the last conversation, there's been a little bit of changes on the political spectrum of things that are changing agendas and will affect some of the flow. Last week, officially, or it's been made public that there was the official first verbal a threat of a walkout based off of some of the bills that are moving forward. That has been made public that has been delivered to legislative leadership. That was based off of several bills, one being the second half of the cap and trade bill that was the source of issues in previous sessions. As you folks know, part of that was taken care of, or they moved forward with implementing part of those bills in rulemaking. The other parts that they were not statutorily allowed to through rulemaking popped up in several versions of bills this session. That led, as the bills started to progress, that led to the Republican caucuses issuing that first kind of explicit threat of a walkout last week. That has kind of started a lot of specific issues on the Senate side more than the House, but it will affect both chambers at some point. That is important because the tight timeline that is occurring. One is that this Friday is the second chamber work session deadline. Bills that want to remain alive in the process must have received the work session by Friday, or the end of day Friday. There's still the target date that they will be out of Salem by June 27th. That preceding that 1 or 2 weeks, they have a target date to get out. June 27th is the constitutional deadline to be done. But it really is just put a little bit of a log jam, or to let people step back and really evaluate what the agendas are and what's moving forward. Leadership is in negotiations currently in both chambers on that, but I would just be remiss if I did not note that, because that will have an effect on the session. That is the political tone update. Last week, we also received the revenue and economic update or forecast. That came in strong, as you folks probably already heard. This is a really important update in our sense, because this is the one that they use to set the budgets moving forward for the 21-23 biennium. We've already seen since that about 6 to 8 budgets be scheduled for work sessions. One of them of great importance to us is the Department of Justice budget, which is scheduled for tomorrow. That was just announced this morning via agenda. The paperwork should be published here within the next 24 hours. Along with the governor's budget. There were some items there that I think in previous meetings we have just said we want to make sure we monitor, specifically regional solutions, items like that. That paperwork still has not yet been released either, but they have been doing an okay job of getting that posted at least a few hours before the meetings occur, so that we can start communicating with legislators in the heat of that moment and get questions on the record or some discussion.
So question, a little bit of clarity, so the Department of Justice budget, that would be judges, would be the part of the discussion, correct?
That would be, we are having two conversations there, that they could pop up in that budget. If they take the path that occurred in the last two sessions, they will not be in that budget. They will be in the program change or the in-session budgets, or the in-session bills, the last four bills that come out of capital construction. That's where they were funded in the last two sessions. That did not occur because of the unfortunate walkouts. But I believe this time there's been a much more robust conversation of having it directly included into the agency budget. So
Yes,
if they are not, yes, if they do not pop up in this budget tomorrow, that does not mean that it won't occur. It could just pop up similar like it did previously in the other bill.
Just acknowledging, so we're not sure exactly where it's going to be. We know where it's been in the past, and
Yes.
we just got to keep a close eye on it at this time.
That is correct, Commissioner.
Amazing. Okay, thank you.
And hope that a walkout doesn't cut us off.
Exactly. Well, and the encouraging thing about that is that in the conversation about the walkout, they did issue the conversation as they want this limited to what they saw as the session's priorities, which was constitutionally passing budgets. So if the judges do pop up in that agency budget, that would be great, because that's where we ran into the issue the last two sessions. And then also focusing on wildfire and COVID response, and also social equity response. The conversations around the threat of a walkout said that the bills being pushed do not fall within those, and thus they should be tabled. So, but jumping real quick back to that revenue and economic forecast, they did see really strong growth in the economy. They do see that they do anticipate full job returns in the fourth quarter of 2022, which is moved up again by 6 months from the last revenue forecast. The thing that I thought would be of importance to the county is that they did receive lottery revenues in the last couple of months have been the strongest they have been in a state history. That's good news in the sense of lottery allocations, which go into economic development and other programs for the counties, but also that also increased general fund resources by $1 billion in not only this current biennium, but the next biennium and the following biennium. So all the way through 23-25. That's good news. As we walked into this session, the COVID had blown about a $2 billion hole in the budget. That has since basically gone away. And then you calculate all the federal resources that have come in as well. There was caution, though, and we wanted to make sure that we noted this to you as well. The economists did caution that budget writers should set money aside because this might be an artificial floor. That you can't, with all of the federal money coming in, some of the UI benefits will expire in a couple months. As things start to wave away from COVID, they just are cautioning that money should be set aside for future biennium just in case numbers aren't there. One of the reasons they said that is at this time during May revenue forecasts, we usually have a lot more data on tax returns. A significant portion of tax returns have not occurred because of extended deadlines. So they just wanted to note that to budget writers. I'm sure that trickles down to the county level for those state resources that flow towards us. And then also setting it aside because they do anticipate a kicker. They are looking at over $1 billion kicker for the personal side, and then a $640 million kicker on the corporate side. But as we know, that will just go to K-12 funding. So the personal kicker will be finalized this summer. And so part of that set aside caution was to just allow the state to react to that without having to go back and reduce budgets. So. And then I guess I just wanted to pause real quick. Do you, given this forum, do you want me to go through what you traditionally do, the budgets for this coming week, or would you like me? I have that also typed out in a Word document format that I can submit as well. I just didn't know the process that you wanted in this meeting versus a Friday forum.
So we do have a bill hearings report, 5 bills on here, high priority to Deschutes County. And as I say, I think we're down to work sessions on each one of these at this time. So is that the list you'd be referring to, five priority bills for Deschutes?
There's a couple others that popped up that maybe two I would just like to point on as they were our top priorities this session.
Let's just go down. Yeah, so it sounds like about 7 bills if you just go down them real quick.
Perfect, absolutely. So Senate Bill 741, this was a top priority 2 for the county in the support position. This was the bill that repeals some of the obsolete reporting requirements for the Central Oregon Health Council. That did pass out of committee with all yes votes last week. It is moving on to the floor for a vote this week, actually today. And so just wanted to note that because of the high priority we had it at. In addition, we have a bill, Senate Bill 214. This is a bill that I just want to flag for you because the amendment gut and stuffed it. And the new bill, the 214-A, it still passed the Senate 24-3, but it does create a rebuttal process and damage it, and a rebuttal process through the judicial system. I'm going to type that up and put that in with the most recent staff measure summary that came out with the amendment. Since it was a full gut and stuff, we had looked at this bill in its original version, and now that it's something new, I just wanted to make sure that the commission knew that. That is moving forward with a public hearing today in its new version, and they're going to try to schedule a work session by Friday on it. So I'm just flagging that for you. But I do want to jump to two things. The Senate Bill 391, the ADU bill, that was carried over from last week. That is scheduled for a work session tomorrow. It is, from all intents and purposes on our communications, is scheduled to move out of committee. It has already passed the Senate 28-1 with one excused. And it is scheduled for, like I said, the work session tomorrow. Sorry, I just read my note redundantly. And then once that goes out, that'll go straight to the floor for an additional vote and ideally become law. So I know that is a top one priority for us as a county. And then our marijuana revenue bill popped back up. It has a work session scheduled tomorrow as well in revenue. Now it is for discussion purposes only. And so when that occurs, it does check the box that it did meet the second chamber deadline. But usually when they do it for discussion purposes only, that is an indication that it might be part of a revenue omnibus bill that is being discussed to come out of the revenue committee here in the next couple of weeks as well. So there's about 5 bills that were put on the agenda that were for discussion purposes only. This was one of them. And so I checked in with 2 revenue committee members, and they are also hearing that the conversation of one big omnibus revenue bill is being discussed. That is their version of why this was put on the agenda as well. I thought that would be of importance for you to know, considering our past conversations. And then I will still submit this in writing to you folks just so that you have it. But I do want to just also note that the employment department budget is moving out today. At some point, I had a note here from one of the commissioners that they wanted me to follow that. They are, as you can imagine, with the federal dollars coming in, they're looking at passing a $6.8 billion budget for that, almost entirely of federal funds. But that they are not looking at budget cuts in that agency. And then I believe we talked about the Department of Justice budget, the governor's budget. Those both are scheduled for tomorrow. And then you're going to start seeing the big healthcare budgets possibly being scheduled for next week or the following. And I know that there is a significant conversation that plays into the county's services significantly as well. And the last bill I wanted to just note is the House Bill 2337. We had this as a priority 2 neutral. It is scheduled for a work session tomorrow as well. There is going to be a -3 amendment. This is the bill that declares racism a public health crisis. The -3 amendment is going to be included into this bill tomorrow. It removes requirements for collection of race, ethnicity, preferred spoken and written languages, and other disability statuses. It is directing, and then it puts in a lot of OHA, go study this and bring us back reports by the next short session or even 2023. So I will include that amendment in my email to Whitney as well, because I know that has been a subject of conversation in our legislative meetings the past couple of weeks. But that will be removing things from the bill and putting a lot of reports in. So, but I will just pause there and see if there's any questions.
Any thoughts? Well, it's great to hear the status and understanding what's going on. A lot of moving parts right now. As I say, if they're not public hearings on the matters, we're just bystanders like everybody else. But being in the know, you've already shared some great information about what's going on here.
Perfect. And you will get a written update too, commissioners, after tomorrow's hearings on how the revenue bill went, and just if there's any insight there. And then also on, as you're probably already watching the ADU bill, but I will make sure that's part of the update tomorrow in email form as well.
Just to repeat what Gina Nichols said this morning with her conversation with Senator Johnson, if there was ever a time there was something we needed or wanted, we need to put that on the list to Senator Johnson. So hopefully maybe we'll be able to fund some state police that we haven't had since 1980. Anyway, that's what the senator, I told Gina.
Perfect. Yeah.
Yeah, Nick.
Thank you, Commissioner Phil. This is Nick Lilac, Community Development. My question with the rural ADU bill, Senate Bill 391, was that the House did adopt a new amendment to that bill last week. Does that mean that does it have to go back to the Senate for concurrence or some other vote, or is it just goes to the House and it becomes law?
My understanding is that, sorry, commissioners, Nick, absolutely, it does have to go back for concurrence if it's in an amended form that didn't pass the Senate. But my understanding is in the negotiations for that amendment, the Senate was part of that. So they do not anticipate any issues in the concurrence.
Great, thank you.
Not a problem.
So yeah, anything else? You know, it is just kind of a status time for the legislative session. Thank you very much for being out there, keeping an eye on things.
Are there any key to-dos for us out of this report?
Any action items you see for the commissioners at this time?
No, the only bill that everything was either a floor vote update or a work session update, which doesn't allow public hearing. The only one different than that was Senate Bill 214, where they are amending it with the public hearing today on short notice. And then that will, to Nick's question, that will have to go back through the whole process for concurrence as well. So I will get that update to you in an email form, and they will leave that open for 24 hours if we do want to submit comment in writing. But just given the short notice, it was just hard to react to this one. And that being said, at any time we do expect them to switch into, right now they're at the 72-hour, 48-hour notices. Given the time, once we get past Friday, I would not be shocked if they suspend the rules and start going to the 1-hour notices, which is traditional at the end of session, but that could occur at any moment. So.
Okay. And I think we were notified that Holly Harris was communicating with Representative Kropp about, I don't know what bill it was, but the topic that she can bring to the table, talking about the Stabilization Center and the MCAT and that information. So. Okay.
Correct. I'm not aware of any other specific department updates that we have for you today. You can see we have a number of staff that have joined us on Zoom. So if anyone does have anything, maybe just turn on your camera. So or use the raise hand function so we know that you have an update. But staff did want to seek board direction kind of on the future cadence of these meetings. If you'd like for this item to come to you Monday afternoons from here on out, or if you'd like to keep Friday meetings on your schedule. I will note that we still have this Friday's meeting on the calendar, and then obviously next week is budget week. So just depending on, we weren't sure if you'd like to have a meeting this Friday, knowing that you'd likely be tied up next week. We're open to scheduling at the board's pleasure.
So at this time, yeah, it would be optimal to have a meeting Friday morning at 8 if there's quick moving items in the legislature. So, I mean, I'd like to be informed. There's a couple items that were shared with us today. Just the top of the statement was a threat of a walkout, so I hadn't heard that before just now. And then the topics that are being negotiated like that. So, knowing that the end of session is coming, the budgets are being talked about. Cap and trade part 2 is mentioned as one of those trigger items. So on Friday, we might be able to hear about the actions that are happening. Any thoughts, Commissioner?
I think we should have one on Friday because the next week is going to be budgetary and
Yep,
Monday is a
then it'll be
holiday.
another whole week, yeah.
So, yeah, no, we need to have one.
Okay. So
I've been trying to figure out when I can talk to Representative Reardon, who's the co-chair of the Joint Ways and Means Subcommittee on Natural Resources, and he's offered me a couple of times during our regularly scheduled board meetings, and then the next time he offered me was this Friday
At 8 o'clock, of
which I
course.
figured was open because we were doing
Nope, no,
this
that's fine.
today. So I might actually take the time to talk to him if he has a chance to speak with me then.
What about another time? I don't know how.
I mean, you all could meet and I could just join in. It won't take more than, I mean, I'm sure I won't get more than 10 or 15 minutes, so.
Okay. Yeah, so let's do that then. Understood. So with that offer, let's keep it on at 8 o'clock. Thank you very much for seeing that, knowing that the next week will be full budget week anyways. So this Friday morning at 8 o'clock, we will have our legislative update like we've done the rest of the session. Is there anybody else from a department that's on this call that has anything? Seeing none, we'll go to the next agenda item. Thank you so much, Phil Schroyers. Item number 2, Deschutes County fiscal year 22 requested fee schedule. So this is review and discuss. So this is really just understanding the big picture here.
Afternoon, Commissioners. Dan Emerson, Budget Manager. And as Commissioner DeBone said, this is really just kind of getting the big picture. There's a lot of attachments there. The first few attachments are, we do ask departments if they're making significant fee changes to write a memo to you all. So there's one for CDD and Health Services. I believe County Administrator Tom Anderson has done one as well. And so those are for reference as we go through the main document here. And this is pursuant to County Code Chapter 4.12, which asks us to make sure that the services we're providing, the fees are up to the actual cost of the service, and to do an annual review on those. So probably the easiest way to go through it is to kind of skip to the end of the handouts that I've sent to the actual fee schedule, which is that PDF that has about 1,000 different fees there. And just to go page by page, if you look at the far column on the right-hand side on that fee schedule, that if there's changes to the fees, that's where you'll find those in those numbers. And if there's green font anywhere in there, that's a new fee or new language. And red font would be a department's requesting to delete or remove a fee.
So I got a couple questions on the memos up
Yeah.
front, just real quick, and this will be pretty simple. And think Nick can help with the first item here. So it has the building safety asterisk, talks about 6.5% increase, International Code Council to square foot construction costs. Could you just put that in perspective for me?
Sure, Commissioner. And Sherry Pinner is also available
Great.
online, or excuse me, she was just a moment ago. This is a fee that the state implements about every 2 to 3 years. And this is a higher one than they've had in the past. And so this is a direct fee that the state imposes, and then we collect that fee. We're required to increase our fees by that amount. So this is not of our choosing or of our proposing this fee. So Sherry, I'll just defer to you to see if you have any other perspectives, as you've worked very closely with Randy on this as well.
Yes, thank you, Nick. So Sherry Pinner, Senior Management Analyst for Community Development. And so this actually increases our building valuation table, or the building valuation of each home, which because our building safety fees are calculated off the building valuation, that gives us an automatic increase. And so just for example, on an 1,800 square foot house, it's with a valuation of $250,000, that would be about a $275 fee increase on that particular permit.
So this is a foundational change relative to the International Code Council, and it does propagate through our fee schedule. So that's kind of exactly, I didn't understand that. So this is, a builder coming in with their checkbook is going to see this, but it is across the whole state, I guess, is what we're saying here.
Absolutely, and there's an opportunity for this to occur each April 1st, and so we typically get noticed in March.
Okay. Thank you very much. And then the next one, current planning talks reduce current general fund allocation $200,000 to $100,000. What's it from? What was the number previous, or what's that number?
So current fiscal year, we were allocated $175,000 for current planning, general fund support. And as we made our way through the year, and you may recall during the previous budget cycle, we were reduced by 2 FTE. And so it ended up that current planning didn't need $175,000 for kind of a base operational services. So in fiscal year 22, we are requesting that amount be dropped to $100,000. And then we have this concept of changing our land use appeal process for land use applications that meet county code requirements. The proposition is that instead of the applicant bearing the burden of that cost, that the county or county general fund would bear the burden of that cost. And again, I want to remind everyone that in the event these general fund dollars aren't utilized, we refund those at the end of each fiscal year.
Very good. Yeah, so that helps seeing those two work together now, too, so I'm glad I asked. Thank you so much. And I think that may be it from the memos. Now we can just go through a fee survey, as mentioned.
And just a heads up, there are four not missing fees, but 4 fees that need to be updated on this. They are for community development, and they are community development planning on page 15. Community development planning 26 is actually going to have, it says $85 per unit increase, but it's actually going to be an $88 increase per unit. On the same page is community development planning fee 46. That's going to have a $27.
So we may need some help with the page. So we've got
Right.
packet numbers, maybe right over the page number you're referring to.
Sure. So on the last attachment, the Deschutes County fee schedule itself, if you go to CDD, which starts on page 4, but the planning division itself starts on page 13 of that PDF.
So some of the pages have numbers in the top corner, it looks like.
So it looks like
Some
that.
don't.
Yeah, I think this one has one at the top, at the bottom right. I think that was a formatting issue with the PDF here. I think 15 has a page number at the bottom right as opposed to the top right. And so
Covered by the
item
packet.
number 26 here, the final plat review, on the unit column should be plus $88 per lot. And item 46, the limited land use decision, should be plus $27 per lot as opposed to $26 per lot. And then on page 17, there's 2 more changes. At the top of the page there, community development planning item number 105, instead of being $37 per lot, that should be $38. And 106 should be, instead of $44 per lot, $45 per lot. And so those are the only changes that I wanted to address before we kind of got into things here.
Okay, thank you. So then, yeah, probably, I guess it's back to page 4 is the one I went back to, but you want to start with page 1?
So I just have a question. Did you do packet page 42? There's the increase, it's in black, is actually less than what it was the prior year. So I'm just wondering if that's an error.
It's page 22 of your numbering system on the corners.
It's from new patients.
I will have to, I can go through my email and check that. I do remember there was one fee on the entire fee schedule that was going the other way. And what number is that, Commissioner Adair?
It's Babies First Cocoon Targeted Case Management. It was $463.35 per encounter, and then you've got it in black on the right side, $460.35. So you've got it. If you really are going down, you've identified it in black. So I'm thinking like maybe that's not the right number.
It said it's from the state of Oregon.
Yeah, it is possible that that number went back down. I'm taking a look at it right now here.
Which item number is this?
It's in the bottom of the page, packet page 42, the last line, Health 36.
I mean, I had to look at it like 3 times to make sure that
Yeah.
it really went down, and but it's not in red.
Yes, that did go. What I have from Health Services is that is now 460.35. So that is what I entered into the fee schedule. So the state of Oregon does come up with many of the health department's fees, especially the public health fees, and so it is possible that has dropped for some reason. But that is correct as far as what I received from the department.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Dan.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Adair.
Okay, now starting from the first page of it, do you want to flip through the changes? Is that what the idea was?
Yeah, I think starting from the first page, and if you guys can just verbally kind of let me know where you're at, and if you have any questions, then we can kind of go through it that way. And like we do have CDD on the phone, as well as Health Services staff and Fair and Expo staff, I believe, as well.
So for me, once again, community development, pre-application meeting. So, you know, I've sent many persons says, call them and talk about a pre-application meeting. Is that a fee that's not always applied, or what's the concept? So this is page 4, CDD number 8, $100 pre-application meeting.
So thank you, Commissioner Bone. Again, Sherry Pinner, Community Development. And you are absolutely correct. We have those application meetings regularly. We have just been providing those as a service.
And then there's a discretion of possibly charging $100 in the past.
Correct, which through conversations with staff, they expressed at how critical and important that these meetings are to get everyone together. And they felt that the fact that we have been providing those as a service in the past, they see a real benefit internally for staff to have people come in for these pre-application meetings. And I think that there was also a kind of a thought that if there was a charge for it, we would get fewer of them, which would then result in more complicated work for staff later on. And that was our logic.
Well, I understand that concept. As I say, when I have people call me sometimes and they've got great ideas, they say, well, go ask for a pre-application meeting. Sometimes it's just learning the terminology, too. The difference between an agricultural building and a shop building and a engineered snow load. You just need to learn the terms sometimes. Great, thank you.
I take it there were no questions prior to CDD, so that puts us on page 9. Is that correct, Commissioner DeBone?
Yeah, well, I guess at this point we're just looking for commissioner's
Going
thoughts.
through,
as we're
okay.
Flipping through. And I don't think I have anything else starred. I guess we could acknowledge that. So the VIP entertainment ticket concept is in here. If somebody wants to share that with us, it could be interesting.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Jeff Hines, Director of Deschutes County Fair and Expo. So that would be a fee that we put in the potential budget for this year as we move forward into the possibility of finding new revenue streams in order to pay for increasing cost and escalating cost of entertainment moving forward. With the limited timeframes and production of the annual fair this year, I don't anticipate that would get implemented in this fiscal year, although it is something that we would like to be able to consider moving forward into future fiscal years. So that we can continue to provide free and relevant entertainment, but also provide an upgraded experience for those who desire and are willing to pay for that upgraded experience.
Okay. Well, thanks for coming up with these ideas. It's good to know that, yeah, if we add it to our fee schedule this year, it could be used in the future.
I have a question about the Lapine Special Sewer District, SDC. It's gone up significantly, apparently, to almost 10,000, and then it's 16,000 if you have a 1-inch pipe. And I was wondering, gosh, seems pretty high. It went up from like 6,600.
So thank you, Commissioner Dare. Again, Sherry Penner, Community Development. Those are fees that we collect on behalf of the city of Lapine, and what that is actually not an increase in the SDC rate. What it is the city of Lapine believes that we're going to start seeing homes built with larger meters, and they charge their sewer based on the size of the meter. So we needed to include those larger meters in the event that they are submitted with requests to build homes.
So Sherry, if the one is $6,700 and it's going up to 10,000, was that a 3/4 inch meter? Or was it a 1/2 inch meter?
So so you can see CDD number 29 is the Lapine Special Sewer District, and I probably should have added that that's a 5/8 meter for $6,663.
Okay.
The same house being built with a 3/4 meter would be $9,995, and the same house being built with a 1-inch meter would be the $16,658. In my conversations with the city of Lapine, those SDC rates have always been in their fee schedule. We just have never implemented them in ours because you did not typically see houses being built with 3/4 meter or 1-inch meter. The Public Works Department in the city of Lapine does believe that that's going to be more commonplace in the future. And so we wanted to be prepared with these fees in our fee schedule in the event we're presented with a charge.
Okay, thanks for clarifying that. So it is, that one will maintain at 5/8 of an inch, but then it goes up for 3/4 and 1 inch.
That is correct.
Okay, thank you.
And there is a space in the word Lapine. You can put that in there.
Yes, we must Lapine.
We will get that corrected.
There you go.
Make sure that's in it for the adopted fee schedule. Apologize.
Okay. So this is in preparation for,
Yeah, I just want to make sure I understand something. So CDD is proposing these new fees in the legacy rural residential areas. And so basically there was, if they had wanted to come in through a conditional use permit before, they would have paid some kind of standard fee. And now we're proposing a lower fee for them to facilitate, you know, people in those areas being able to pursue a permit. Is that?
Well, Commissioner, are these the Lapine fees or are these different fees?
I'm sorry. I'm jumping to those legacy rural residential areas that would have been affected by
yes, right.
the non-prime resource land designations if that had moved through. So the new fees that are being proposed for those areas are basically like you know, that we would have charged them a certain fee before, but now we're creating a new category of fee to you know, basically relieve a little bit of the fee barrier to them.
Yeah, that is correct.
Okay.
And the reason is that we're seeing very similar applications for each of the properties, and so there are built-in efficiencies for our reviewing those applications. So it's still intended to cover our actual cost of service. It's just that since those properties are small and have similar characteristics, we're able to process those with fewer resources.
Great. Thank you.
Dan, I have a question. Maybe you corrected this already. Health, item number 74. It says 9715, and then on the right side it's 7214. Did you correct that one?
Health item 74.
Right, it's a shot.
Yes, that is also going down this year, and
So it's-
that's by the state as well.
Okay. So it's going down like $24, something pretty significant.
Hmm.
Okay, so yeah, this is preparation. This will be part of our budget. Yeah, please, Tom.
Oh, yeah. Thank you, Commissioner. I was just trying to help put this in context.
Yep.
So these proposed fee changes that you're seeing in the schedule that Dan's provided are incorporated into the proposed budget. You just received the budget document this past Friday, and that will be subject to our budget hearings next week. So the changes that are incorporated here are included in that proposed budget. However, many of them are subject or tied to special requests that departments may be submitting. For example, in CDD, there's some questions related to the hearings officer fees and so forth, and fees are adjusted in the case of CDD in some cases based on the amount of support that comes from the general fund. So there's a balancing act. So this is what's proposed. So we do this every year for the benefit of Commissioner Chang, who hasn't been through this process before, is present to you the proposed fee adjustments. In many cases, departments will cover them again during their budget presentations to you next week. Then we'll come back following budget week for a separate public hearing related to the fee adjustments, and then finally adoption of the budget later on in June. So this is the first step in what could be several discussions related to the proposed fees and how they relate to the bottom line appropriations that are submitted to you for approval during budget week and then leading towards final adoption.
We'll see it a few more times.
So Nick, I know we were really talking about helping the people out in those non-resource prime, those 6 different 900 acres in Deschutes County. Is that the most we can help them out? I think it was down 1,000 or something for those fees. That's, I just feel so badly for those people. Haven't they been like begging since the 70s for us to do something?
We've been working with them at least for the past decade, and Peter Gutowski's online, and he estimated the time that would still be required to process those applications. They are still conditional use permits, and they still require staff evaluation and analysis, and they are still subject to appeals and rather lengthy staff reports. So I can certainly defer to Peter, and I know he thought about it very carefully of what would still be necessary to cover our costs. So it would be a board decision, I believe, to go below that. But Peter, I'll defer to you on any other thoughts you have with processing those applications.
Great, thank you. Commissioners, Peter Gutowski, Planning Manager. Commissioner Dare, it's a good question. The fees, I believe, are 25% below what we would normally charge for a template dwelling on lands that are zoned forest use and for exclusive farm use zone property for non-farm dwellings. We did, evaluate what it would take to still review the requisite criteria. I mean, unfortunately, with the fact that we weren't successful in changing our codes to address these 6 legacy areas, they still have to meet state criteria to site a dwelling in these 2 zones. And so it's something that we'll monitor. Again, I'm anticipating a customized website that provides some examples where we have decisions where we've approved dwellings in these 6 locations, to try to provide instructions that help those property owners in preparing a burden of proof. But at this point, that was what we thought was most prudent. But again, it's something that we can track, and if necessary, we can certainly come back, and will come back to the Board of County Commissioners to adjust further modifications once we have the data to support it.
I just think it would be really thoughtful if the county would let those people know that we have reduced it 25%, just because, they were all here testifying their story, and I get it. So anyway, I would definitely would somehow let them know.
I think that's, yeah, just to follow up, I think that's a great suggestion. Waiting on the board's decision on the fee resolution, we can then, once we have this website updated, we could send a courtesy letter or postcard letting them know per the direction of the Board of County Commissioners what we've done to try to address their circumstances, again, in these 6 residential areas in Deschutes County. So it's a great idea.
Oh, well, thank you. I just, I remember their stories, and I just feel like, okay, well, 25% it's quite significant, so thank you for coming up with that, and I would hope they would be appreciative that we are trying to make a difference for their future building.
Peter and Nick, am I remembering correctly that folks who are going through this process, one of the really big pieces of cost associated, which is not a fee that they pay to us, is for the soil data. Is that correct? They would need to pay for a soil survey for their piece. And I do want to ask if there would be any kind of way for us to achieve like economies of scale with getting that data for these people if we kind of like bulk purchased it. And so instead of just, calling one soil survey person to come out and look at your five acre parcel, and then, the person with 3 lots down, calls the same person out, and each time you're paying a fee, if there would be a way that we could, kind of do a larger scale soil survey, and we help to cover some of that cost. Kind of shaving $1,000 or $1,500 off of someone's fee is helpful. But I mean, if the really big hurdle is other pieces, then I just wonder if there's something else we could do for these folks that would be helpful. And as I think about it, we will get. Not only is it a good thing to do to help these people who may have been waiting for many years to develop their property, but to help them kind of fulfill their dream, but also from a fiscal perspective, if getting them through this process means the difference between them paying taxes on an undeveloped piece of property versus a property with a house on it. It's actually, there's a payback. There's a return on investment for us to invest a little bit to facilitate them through that process. So, again, I just wanted to ask if there's any kind of way that we could, essentially make an investment on the front end to help these folks, get through the process, recognizing that we get a property tax benefit on the tail end.
I think what we can do, and I was just making sure I'm not jumping in front of Peter, one of the things we can do is we can reach out to a couple of soil scientists and, number one, ask them ballpark, what does it cost for them to conduct these studies in these areas? And then number two is if we provide them a map and just say, for example, if you did 10 to 20 lots, we can ask them that question. One of the challenges that we do have as well, a lot of the soil characteristics are similar. There are different soil complexes. And it can change in the middle of one parcel to the next. But still, if they're on location, does that save some time to do multiple properties at one time? So we can certainly
mobilization costs alone could be significant.
Right. So we can certainly reach out and ask at least one or a couple of the soil scientists that regularly submit studies for our reviews and our permits to get a better understanding. Because otherwise, I don't know the answer to that question other than saving travel time. Is there much of a difference? And Peter, I don't know if you have any thoughts about that.
Yeah, it's a really good question. I mean, obviously, you would need you really need to gauge within these 6 areas who's interested in developing. Any soil scientist is going to have to be on the property and likely do some soil borings just to substantiate the soil on the property in relationship to the NRCS soil data. So, that can be another strategy that's explored maybe with a letter I mean, I agree with Nick's comments that we could have an understanding of what a retainer is for a soil scientist. The letters that could go out could respectfully ask, or try to gauge neighborhood sentiment for development opportunities to see if the stars are in alignment. The other piece, again, I don't want to go too far down the rabbit hole here because, again, these are state criteria, but access is another issue that has to be addressed by property owners, that there's the access is capable of accommodating our emergency fire and life safety vehicles, and that's something that has to be evaluated at the date of application. And of course, road conditions this only applies to just a few, maybe one or two of the 6 legacy residential areas, but that's just another example of a criterion that will need to be addressed in real time. So I introduced that just because, again, the state criteria can get very detailed very quickly as you start reviewing state criteria. But again, I think the letter or postcard, the correspondence that Commissioner Adair mentioned, could be a useful mechanism to assess the timing and interest in these vacant properties, and then we can, if nothing else, put these residents or these property owners in a position to collaborate. Again, if there's economies of scale. So some details that need to be worked out, but I certainly think starting with some of those questions, reaching out to the soil scientists that Nick mentioned is a good start, and then we can see what kind of synergy comes from it.
Thank you. Yeah, just trying to think of what else we could do to be helpful for folks who've been through a very challenging and politically complicated land use issue.
Peter, of those 113, remember the historical houses from 1945 that could do an ADU? Did any of those do an ADU in Deschutes County? I mean, I know we sent them notes and everything. Did anybody follow through on that?
We've had several that have responded. I can follow up and I'll send an email to Tom Anderson, our county administrator, CCing or blind copying the board. I don't have the data in front of me, but I believe 1 or 2 followed up. But I would need to check the data tracking spreadsheet. The correspondence was helpful. We had many reach out to us. But let me get back to you on that information, Commissioner. And like I said, it's a good question, and I'll share it with the entire commission later this afternoon once I get a chance to look at that spreadsheet.
Oh, thanks, Peter. I just, it was like just this little thing that we could do in Deschutes, and, if only 1 or 2 did it, that shows you that Senate Bill 391 has got to pass. Because that's 9,800 possibilities, right? So for our housing that is so incredibly tight here.
Okay, so this is our requested fee schedule discussion today. Anything else, Dan?
Nope. If the commissioners have been able to look over the fees and don't have any questions right now, like County Administrator Anderson said, we will be going over it again. I'm sure we'll see it again. So.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Item number 3, Deschutes County Treasurer and Finance Report for April 30th, 2021. Remember, a year ago, the world looked very different. I'm thinking the budget and now even the financial statements stepping into COVID. It would look like we were going to have to pull in tight and maybe not expect any growth or activity, and it sure has looked different.
Yeah, I don't think we would have seen this coming with even a wild imagination. So as you mentioned, item number 3 on today's agenda is the Treasurer and Finance Report for the period ended April 30th, 2020, fiscal year 2021. And I'll just give you a few of the highlights here. Feel free to stop me along the way if you have any questions. The portfolio balance right now at the end of April is $239 million. That's down about $2 million from the previous month that I shared with you. All of our category investment portfolio types are all within their maximums. So that's good. One thing I would note is you'll notice the LGIP pool amount is $45 million. That's within the maximum amount, but today, this morning, we actually received our first tranche of ARPA funds, $19.2 million, so that actually hit the county accounts today. So we'll see that number go up.
What's the maximum suggested for LGIP?
It's 51.2 million, so we'll be busy investing those dollars to get that back down underneath that 51.2. But next month, I'd expect to see that number will be above the.
Yep, understood.
The suggested.
Well, we're not the only ones in the state in that situation, probably.
No, everybody else is too. So, a couple other pointers here. The investment income for the month is $166,000. That's down $3,000 from last month, and is, believe it or not, as we were just talking before, is half of what it was a year ago. Exactly one half. Year to date, we're at about $2 million in investment income, and that's down $1 million and $1.75 million from last year. There's no change in our pool percentage, 60 basis points. That was dropped from 75 basis points to 60 basis points on March 1st. And our overall average portfolio return dropped by 2 basis points from 88 to 86. And the only other piece I'll point out here is our average weighted maturity is 1.93 years. So we have to pay attention to that. Our policy limit is 2 years. So we'll be looking at what that means is with the first tranche of the ARPA funds coming in, we'll be looking at vesting those in between 0 and 2 years, which it also happens to probably tie really well with the investment strategy of those funds in the next couple of years. All right, turning the page, page 60 on your packet. The only thing I'll notice here is that next month, if you look at that graphic in the middle, the 3-year portfolio balance, you look at the very tail end of that, that will end up blipping up. It will follow a little bit different trend than it has in the past, but we'll expect to see that blip up a little bit next month. And then next page, 61 in your packet, one thing I wanted to point out here is the top, the investment items we have here are all sorted in by maturity date. So those that are maturing sooner are at the top, and those that are maturing later at the bottom. So you'll notice the 5th or so column from the left, the maturity date is May 1st of 2021, May 13th of 2021, and so on. So these investment items that are actually maturing, if you slide over a little bit to the YTM column, you'll notice that they are at the lowest of those top. We're at 1.7% yield to maturity. Others are at 2.65 and 2.70. And then that compares to what we're buying now, which this last month, if you slide down to the blue items, the 2 that we purchased are at 70 basis points. So we're going to continue to see downward pressure on our overall portfolio return. I think that's just the nature of the market right now. Turn to page 62, just a couple of finance updates. The first one there is American Rescue Plan. At the time of this writing, I had said that I expected our first tranche of $19 million to be received by May 26th. Well, it was a couple days off on that. We actually received it today. Just a brief update on that. We're still working on number 2, the FEMA funding for the Mass Vaccination Center. OHA sent us a draft contract. We have a couple of questions on that contract, and we're getting clarification. And then, as been mentioned already today, the fiscal year 21-22 budget, the proposed budget is put together, and I believe we'll have those binders to you this afternoon. We found a slight change that we needed to make, and we'll get that to you this afternoon. Moving on to page 63, the only change here is there was a The total FTE count between March and April increased by 1, and that was in 911. The board in April opted to reinstate the 5th operations supervisor. So if you look at the 911 row, which is about halfway down, you'll see that in July, they had a total of 60 FTE, and then one of those vacancies, I believe, was eliminated for about 8 months, and then it was reinstated last month. So we're back to where they were at the beginning of the year. So one increase there just in terms of legal FTE. In terms of unfilled percentages, you'll notice at the bottom it's a little over 7% is unfilled, which is slightly more than our average. And it was reported to me that we had an unusual number of terms this last month of folks retiring out or terminating one way or another, and I don't know if that's tied in with the fiscal year, but we just had a few more than we would normally have. It's a little bit more than average. Flipping the page over to page 64, and I'm going to sound a little bit like a broken record, but I'll continue to play that record because it's still the case. General fund, the revenue in our general fund year to date is $44 million, or 117% of our budget, compared to last year, which was $36 million and 98% of our budget. Same on our expense side, we're at $38 million in expenses year to date at 97% of our budget, and last year was $29 million and 79% of budget. So when we come back for budget adoption in June, we'll also come back with a supplemental or a budget adjustment request that will take, most of this is due to CARES, and we'll take care of that at that time as well. So there won't be such a difference in June. All right. I did want to just spend a minute or two on the general fund just to get in a little bit more details. If you turn over to page 69. If you look at our total resources in the general fund, our current budget is $37.2 million. I'm in the center column, fiscal year 21, $37.2 million total resources. That compares with a projection of $45 million. So our projected revenue compared to our budget right now is, we're projecting $7.8 million. So in terms of why that is we've mentioned it before, I've mentioned it before, but I just want to show you on the actual report where it's at. But there's primarily two lines. The third revenue line is other general revenues. And you'll notice all the way to the right-hand side that there's a variance of $6.3 million. So that's the variance between what we're projecting and what's in the budget. And that is mostly CARES dollars. So that's where that comes from. The other item is clerk's recording fees. And if you're in that right-hand variance column, you'll see the $1.1 million. That means our projected revenue in that line item is $1.1 million more than what we have currently loaded in the budget. And those will be a couple of the items that we will true up. But that's the revenue story right now. So we're projecting a lot more than we actually have in the budget. The same is true sliding down to the requirement side. Our budget right now for expenditures is $19.2 million, and we're projecting to spend $25 million. And the bottom line item underneath expenditures, those are the CARES disbursements. And then the one last thing I would say about the general fund is if you go all the way to the bottom under our budget, you'll see a projected fund balance of $9.7 million. We're actually projecting an ending fund balance of $13.3 million. And that's a component of those above items I mentioned a little bit, plus the fact that we began the year $1.4 million more in our beginning fund balance than we had anticipated. So all things being the same, and if this was the end of the year, our beginning fund balance in our FY22 budget would be $13.3 million. All right, flipping over to page 71, just briefly want to touch on TRT. So we have a projected revenue there of $10.5 million at the very top, room tax revenue. I think that's going to be closer to $11 million when it's all said and done. And we update these revenue projections just
slightly after the board reports are submitted, so I'm always a little bit in arrears in keeping up with that. But just so you know, we expect that to be a little bit higher at the end of the year. And then moving to packet page. And the reason why I'm skipping over these others, unless you have questions, is just there's no significant changes from last month. All right, if you skip over to page 85. So the one.
Oh, I did have a question on page 74, Greg.
Sure.
There were no notes on 74. I mean, were there notes the prior month or something? Is that where I should pull it up?
Oh, that's because that's a good question. So Health Services Fund 274, that's a summary of the next 3 pages in health.
Okay.
Services. And the notes are all on the, there's more detail in the next 3 funds.
Thank you.
Mhm.
I know, I was going, well, there's a lot of material things that are happening, and, okay.
Yeah, so on page 85, back at page 85, you'll notice that the events revenue, or the one change I wanted to mention to you is we've reduced the events revenue, top line on the revenue, down to $928,000. It was 1.1 million last month, but we lowered it because a large piece of that revenue source is reimbursement from FEMA for the vaccine center. And FEMA has some limits on what can be charged. So as you know, with the hotels and the fair is the same way, Fair and Expo, is they have different rate structures. One's are rack rates and they just have different rate structures. So we had to reduce that revenue projection down to be within inside the FEMA limits they had set for us. And then while we're talking about the fair, on page 86 and 87, as you know, the fair is planned to be a go in some form or fashion, which we're not quite sure of yet, but working with Jeff on some of those details, and he tells me that in the next month or so, or by June 1, they'll know those details, and so we should have some reflection of the financials in the reports here as we move forward.
So that's basically going to just be, yeah, it's still coming. Not even in the documents yet.
Yeah, there's several options that they're talking about, and they don't know what that is yet.
Amazing.
Commissioners, I think you're going to get this afternoon update from Jeff. I saw a draft over the weekend. It's pretty robust in terms of the elements of the fair that they think they can pull off this year. So this will be the first of what will likely be weekly updates that you'll get from Jeff on how the planning is going and how they're gearing up.
Great.
So we'll track those and make sure we're reporting back so there's some relationship between those plans and the financials.
And the fair money that's in the bill in the legislature actually looks like it may be a go-to. So that should be significant.
Yeah. Okay. And speaking of the fair, if you flip over to the RV park, which is Fund 218 on page 819. So
Sorry, which page was that?
Or page 89, sorry, not 819. Page 89. So projected revenue at 472,000 is up from last month of 404,000, and that's just revised projections on utilization out at the RV park. This is tied to the RV park reserve because anything that is left in the RV park operations at the end of the year gets transferred into the reserve. So if you flip the page to page 90, we're now projecting an ending fund balance in that fund of 861,000, and last month it was 791,000. Moving in the right direction. It's still not at the $1 million mark where we had our budget, but we're moving in the right direction. And then I believe that's it. The only other piece I would mention is on page 92 is the Health Benefits Reserve Fund. We had projected an ending fund balance in that fund of 14.8 million. We continually are looking at our cost projections there, and it looks like they're going to come in less than what we had projected last month. So that fund balance is now closer to $16 million. Again, we're watching this in terms of month to month and year to year, but also over the course of years to bring that fund down into
a fund balance that's closer to our policy limits. Any questions?
No questions. Thank you so
All right,
much.
thank you much.
Well, I would like to note that the transfer station, the numbers are still ahead, which is always an economic indicator of what's going on in Deschutes County. So I saw that that was ahead. And CDD was ahead too. So seems like we must be having a lot of activity going on.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Greg.
Next is item number 4, marijuana retail hours and annual reporting / inspections. Brandon Herman, nice to meet you. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be here. Good to meet you all in person. To be here in person. I've watched several meetings now, probably half a dozen, so I feel this false sense of familiarity.
In person. There you go. Oh, there he is. Yeah.
It's great. Times are changing for the better, I think. So I have agenda items number 4 and 5, and each of these are kind of a two-parter. The first one, agenda item number 4, is dealing with some guidance we're seeking on potential amendments to marijuana retail hours and annual reporting and inspection regulations. So based on some recent community input and several work sessions with the Planning Commission, we are again looking for a bit of direction. These are both citizen-initiated, and we provided background on both of these topics in this memorandum. So I'm going to just, in sticking with kind of the flow of these memos, I'll start out with the Planning Commission recommendations. And if you have any questions, feel free to stop me. If there are any knowledge gaps on my part, both Nick and Peter are here, and hopefully they can fill those in. So first is the marijuana retail hours. PC, the Planning Commission formally recommended adopting the updated marijuana retail hours for marijuana businesses. They're currently restricted from a 9 a.m. to 7 p.m. OLCC, City of La Pine, City of Bend both allow a 7 a.m. to a 10 p.m. Schedule. Our two business owners both provided public comment citing kind of a bit of competitive disadvantage in terms of those retail hours. Hypothetically speaking, you could have one retail business on one side of the street that closes at 7, and there's one across the street that's allowed to remain open until 10 o'clock. In addition to that, they cited the opportunity to hire more people, so longer hours, more hours in the week. Perhaps they can hire 1 or 2 other staff members. And then third part to this is just kind of aligning our code with OLCC guidance. Any questions there? Nope? Okay.
Well,
yeah.
No, not right now.
Are you sure? Okay.
One question that came to mind as I was reading through that was, I was curious whether liquor stores in the unincorporated county have similar kinds of operating hours, and because I see the two in a fairly similar light.
That's a good question, and I don't have the answer to that. Maybe that's a no. Peter, do you have any idea in terms of liquor store hour operations?
And we could look it up later. I'm done.
Yeah.
I'm just curious.
I can get back to you on that.
Yeah.
For sure. So Deschutes County currently has 2 operations. La Pine, City of La Pine has 3. Bend has 26. So there's a little bit of disparity between kind of what Deschutes County allows and these other operations. You can see a map on page 98 that kind of delineates where these 2 businesses are operated, one very near Sun River and the other just outside of the City of La Pine boundaries. So the second part to this is the marijuana annual reporting and inspections requirements. The board, as I'm sure you're aware, received a request from a marijuana producer to modify and or remove annual reporting and inspection requirements for these businesses. The idea was here to, one, reduce redundancies, so these businesses already have to report to OLCC. Secondly, it reduces some operational capacity strains that inspections place on staff. There are approximately 40 of these businesses that need to be inspected annually, so there's, we're pretty pressed right now. And so to follow up with that, we think maybe some opportunities to better understand kind of what a change in reporting and inspection requirements could look like, aside from this memo, would be to potentially compare other code compliance processes for uses and buildings in Deschutes County as compared to this marijuana-related businesses, and potentially maybe some opportunities for the public to get involved, so a survey or a panel to get some better insight, if that's something that you would desire. It's worth noting that for reporting years 2018, 19, and 20, staff observed a 100% compliance. So people are generally, folks are generally falling in line with our rules and regulations. I'm just going to give you a little bit of an insight into what Deschutes County requires and then what Oregon Liquor Control Commission requires. So we require documents demonstrating compliance with land use decisions, permits, fire, health, safety, wastewater, and building codes. We require a marijuana control plan, conditions of approval agreement, and then any other pertinent information that the business feels will help them fall in line with our requirements. In addition to that, we schedule annual inspections. OLCC tracks all compliance documents. Many of them are the same documents through a CTS system. This is a cannabis tracking system, and this requires updating. So if one of your documents falls out of date or out of compliance, the business owner is alerted and has a time gap to update that thing. In addition, OLCC requires harvest weight record, video surveillance and backup compliance, daily purchase limit records, and worker permit compliance, and then they do random spot inspections. So unannounced, can go out at any time to make sure everything's in order. So some potential outcomes from this process include, or could include, maintaining the current reporting and inspections process, limiting reporting and inspections to kind of specific times, or outright eliminating annual reporting and inspections. Any questions yet?
I have a question.
Sure.
You're on the marijuana annual reporting. Your first sentence says, exercise caution in removing the annual inspection and reporting requirements.
Yes.
And I've talked to Sheriff Nelson about it. I just feel there are so many things that the state is supposedly doing that they don't do. And I know our team really does do that annual inspection. So I appreciate those words that you used.
Yeah, they, as I said, they abstained from giving a formal recommendation, but they did recommend exercising caution with this for that exact reason, that there are some kind of Swiss cheese hole gaps between information that we require and information that OLCC requires, in addition to it being just a hot button issue. And so it could become a very huge process. That's not to say it's not a reason not to do it, but something worth noting. Thanks for bringing that up.
Okay, so that was wording then from the Planning Commission.
Yeah, you know what? I gleaned over that. My apologies.
Well,
Yes.
That's why I'm sitting here today, is because I do believe that it's important to exercise caution. And what, you said that there are some that are gone now. Are we still at 40 production
Yes.
facilities?
Yeah, so we're roughly 40, my last count. There are some,
Well, we're at 40 permits issued, right? I mean, but the number that are actually in production is significantly lower than that, isn't it?
That's correct. Yeah, I don't have an accurate number of businesses that are in production, just that kind of approximately 40 permits are out there, including those 2 retail establishments.
It's probably in the neighborhood of 25.
Okay, we're probably at 25, Nick?
And Peter may know, Peter's been tracking, maintains the tracking list. He may very well know the precise number.
Well, you said that some of them had been sold their land, they weren't doing it anymore, they've gone on, so, okay, so we're actually down to 25 then.
And Peter may have
And Commissioner, I'll just jump in. Peter Gutowski, planning manager. Nick was close. That's impressive. Just the actual number of approved OLCC marijuana production locations is 23. There have been a total of 51 land use decisions that approved marijuana production, but only 23 have received an OLCC license, and I should point out that 4 have subsequently been canceled. So we're now at 19.
Oh, and that's in the rural county, not referring to other land uses in Bend or Lapine.
Correct. Those are land uses that are subject to our jurisdiction in rural Deschutes County.
Stand corrected. Thank you. Any further questions?
So acknowledging this is a decision point for the Board of Commissioners to proceed with these 2 ideas as a Deschutes County initiated text amendment process, not an applicant-driven process, because that could be a possibility also. So somebody in the industry could start this process. And these are legislative for the whole industry, though, too, not just one of the growers or producers. So the question is to us as a board now, just acknowledging. So Commissioner Adair, Commissioner Chang, and myself,
Yeah,
this is the moment. Yeah,
I still have a couple of questions.
Sure, yeah.
So thank you for that sort of that detailed list of what gets covered by OLCC and what gets covered during our reporting and inspection process. I was writing stuff down, but I am having trouble seeing the Swiss cheese.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like if you put those 2 lists next to each other, what exactly is, what is not covered by OLCC that we're concerned about?
Do you want me to answer that question?
Yes, please.
The 2 main issues are going to be noise and odor that our code requires compliance with, and OLCC does not. Those are going to be the 2 most important. And so we do inspect both of those with the on-site system. In the annual reporting, they demonstrate that they continue to have the systems in place and they're operational that were in their initial application and approved by the county. When we arrive on site, we confirm that there's no noticeable odor from the property line, and that the decibel levels, and generally we don't hear anything from the property line as it is at the staff level. So those are the 2 primary issues. There are a number of other areas. I think we also have access standards, and we have a number of others that aren't required. But once those conditions of approval were initially met and satisfied, then we don't need to further evaluate those.
That's helpful to understand.
And then having this in the big picture, these are annual inspections on noise and odor, and we're not talking about taking those land use requirements away. We're talking about just the action of annual inspections.
That's correct.
What else do we cover in our annual inspection besides noise and odor that may already be addressed by OLCC?
That's a good question. And Commissioner, what we should do, and Peter and I can coordinate with Brandon and you, is to provide a list of what our inspection sheet looks like. We should actually provide that to you. What we do is we look at, we make sure the key is that they're compliant with their conditions of approval, that they're compliant with everything that they said that they would address in their code. And a lot of those are, as Brandon mentioned, are duplicative of OLCC, the security cameras, the waste disposal, and a lot of those are, but our annual inspection process, they submit a report to us that demonstrates they're in compliance. We then review that with their conditions of approval, and then before we go into the field, we review the conditions of approval, because all of the applications are unique and property specific. When we then conduct the inspection, we then verify that there are conditions of approval based on our evaluation of the site, that they're still in compliance with those. So if that's helpful, we can provide that list of our checklist when we go on the site. I think we previously provided that to the Board of Commissioners, but of course that was a previous board, and so we should share that with you.
I would love to see that. Thank you.
We can get that, and then the OLCC CTS requirements as well. So you can have just a separate-
Yeah, it'd be great to see those side by side. Thank you.
Absolutely.
So, as I say, this is pretty much a decision point of proceeding. I want to thank the Planning Commission for providing input on this and the work they've done on this topic also.
Never-ending work you've done on this project.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes, never-ending. So,
And I'll set direction to it. I'm supportive of both of these topics to be brought to the process of a county-initiated text amendment, which is going to provide opportunity for public input still in this process. The statement from the Planning Commission on both of these topics is very valuable as input and a starting point. So, as I say, I'm supportive.
I actually heard a very interesting report the other day on KBND, and they were talking about DUIs. I think it was from Bend PD, but I asked someone to see if we could pull it up, and I haven't been able to actually pull it up. But they said they were giving like DUIs during the day. You know, it wasn't just like Friday night, or it was all day long. So it's kind of the other side of the story.
And were they saying that they were predominantly marijuana related, or
It was
you're just saying DUIs?
No, it was mentioned in the report that it was a cross-section, but it was like shocking because it was like 10 in the morning. And so I guess I'll have to get a hold of the police chief from Bend and see if I can find those numbers.
As I say, I'm trying to put a little direction to this. That's what we're looking for today, is kind of a go, no-go point in time proceeding with this project. I know we've had input from industry a few times and property owners about the retail hours. So as I say, just allowing the kind of the OLCC system to be in place and not have this, other set of numbers is what I'd be supportive.
Yeah, so maybe some next steps could include, for the marijuana retail hours, you could initiate legislative amendments to adjust those hours of operation. You could maintain existing hours or something else completely. And then for the annual reporting and inspections, again, initiating legislative amendments, maintaining the existing reporting and inspections as they are, or something else.
I guess one of my interests is to recognize marijuana production facilities that have been in operation for a few years and have had 100% compliance in prior inspections. I would love to see us be able to reduce the scope of what gets inspected, maybe just down to noise and odor, or reduce the frequency. You've been through two clean inspections already. You get a year off, or it's only every other year or every third year or something like that. And I certainly when we're talking about all these permits issued, but then places that are at least according to OLCC, not in production yet, those would be probably good to still inspect on a regular basis to make sure that they didn't start production before they got all their ducks in a row. But for the people who have been in business for a few years, who've had clean inspections, I really I think that our time, we can use our human resources to much better effect in other places. And I've mentioned in other board meetings that if there's a way to, if you can directly translate those hours saved into person hours being spent trying to find illegal marijuana production, hiding in a hemp field or whatever, then that I think that if we have concerns about marijuana in our society, that's a much more strategic way to use those person hours. So those are just a couple of my initial thoughts on this.
So you're supportive of starting the process of legislative amendments for both of these topics?
I am.
Okay. Commissioner Adair?
I'm not for the annual inspections. I think they're great. I think we're talking code enforcement is looking for illegal. Our people are just inspecting the ones that exist now, and you know what? It's a day in the life of a year. It's really just fine, and I would never count on OLCC. So I feel like I can count on Deschutes County to do a really good job. I think it's important. Talking with law enforcement, yeah, they know it's coming up every year, and it's just a cost of doing business. So, and you know what? They were open all of COVID, and there's a lot of small businesses that were shut down. So,
are you supportive of the retail hour discussion?
changing the retail hours, I'll vote on that. I'm still looking for that. I want to look for that document and say to match. Yeah.
Well, so it's really just putting direction to this whole thing today also.
Okay, we don't vote today.
I don't know that we're going to need a minutes motion specific.
I'm sorry.
No, please.
Commissioners, I think if you direct us to initiate the amendments, it doesn't predetermine your outcome of a vote based on what the public has to say, the Planning Commission's recommendation on the formal amendments, and then the board, of course, you can still adjust it. And we would work closely with Dave on if the board chooses to change the amendments based differently from what we proposed, either the hours of operations or if it's 5 inspections or something of that nature, and the board said 3 or 7 or something else. There's probably that latitude that the board could make those adjustments given its legislation as well.
Yeah, so as I say, we're setting the ship to sea here. We're starting the process, it sounds like, so there's support and there's comments about it. But, I mean, all of us would be supportive of seeing it on paper, starting the public process, understanding it's legislative for everybody. So, yeah.
And nice to meet you in person, Brandon.
There you go.
You too. Thanks so much.
I should have said Brandon's been with us for 3 months, just about.
Oh, gosh.
And he's highly qualified. I probably should have introduced him to start with. He has our AICP, the American Institute of Certified Planners. He also has his landscape architecture degree and accreditation with landscape architecture. He's worked in the private sector, project management, and really extraordinary background, and we're very, very fortunate to have him. So I should have introduced you at the beginning, but I'll do it at the end. So
It's okay. And it's not the end because I have the next text amendment. So.
True.
There you go. That was between 2 items. There you
Good
go.
job, Nick.
Yeah,
Okay, so that's direction on that first item.
Perfect. Thank you.
Next one is Guest Ranch and Title 17 text amendment.
Yes. So these are both staff initiated. The first one, as you mentioned, is dealing with the Guest Ranch Sunset Clause as a conditional use of the EFU zone, and the second are Title 17 text amendments. These were both worked through kind of the public process. We had 3 meetings with the Planning Commission, a work session, a public hearing, and then a deliberations session. We heard, for the Sunset Clause, we heard public testimony from 2 folks in favor of removing the Sunset Clause. And it's in having conversation with one of them, it's a little bit confusing. Removing the Sunset Clause has been in place, it looks like, since about 2010. And there have been 3 or 4 ordinances to disallow the Sunset Clause to kick in. So, in other words, allowing guest ranches to continue as a use. And during a May of 2019 Oregon State Legislature session, they voted in favor of House Bill 2435, which removes the Sunset Clause and requires annual reporting for guest ranches. And we are simply updating our code to reflect those same state changes. The second piece to this, and I should mention that Cody Smith is on the line here. He is our county engineer that initiated these text amendments. They're for 1748, Chapter 1748, excuse me. They are the design and construction specifications in the subdivision section. And these updates essentially streamline the code, update outdated language, phone numbers, and any references that are kind of outdated. So some really kind of basic stuff that will, keep the code in sync.
Great, so we're in the same spot here. So this is
Yes.
the kind of work session and preparing for, so, we're not making a go, no-go on decision here, but we're learning about this work session item.
Yes, June 9th, I believe, is when I have the public hearing scheduled for this. So any questions I can help answer.
So I know that there's Long Hollow, which is like world famous down on Holmes Road. And I'm wondering how many other ranches are there? Do you have any idea?
I don't have that number on the top of my head. I bet you Peter does, though.
Peter.
Yeah.
I mean, it's world famous, so I just wondered.
Commissioner, based on the data that we have, there are 2 guest ranches that, possibly a third that, but I'm aware of 2 guest ranches that are active. There's a third that had land use approval. I'm not certain that they're still operating, but we don't see very many of these. And the data that I've had our team kind of scrub went back, 10 to 15 years. So there's the one that you just mentioned, Commissioner, and there was also, and I don't think this is the same location, but it's in Sisters Country. There's a guest ranch that recently modified their approval. Maybe that's the same location, but I can't say for certain. But you can certainly count them on one hand.
No, I think they're different, honestly. There was one in front of us, perhaps maybe in 19 or something, and then it seemed like they pulled back on what they were doing. But anyway, so there's only just a couple of them then. That's really too bad, because I think the trail riding in Deschutes County is some of the finest in the world. So,
I will add that one of the folks that provided testimony is interested in initiating the process to start an additional guest ranch. So there's a bit of interest out there.
I was trying to connect the dots on this. We heard from DD Ranch about something agritourism related in the last few months, but that's not this. That's something else. Okay.
Commissioner Chang, this is Peter Gutowski again. They received a agritourism limited use permit just a few weeks ago for their operation. So that's a separate category. It doesn't. It's not. They didn't go through a guest ranch provision, but it allows them to have more agritourism types of activities at their location.
Thank you.
So Cody, is there anything interesting about the Title 17 subdivision stuff? I mean, because as I look through it, it's very much just updates to the words and the references.
Yeah, so I guess just to back up a little bit, this was kind of some house cleaning stuff that after kind of living with it, dealing with it for quite a while now, back in January, I had sent out a proposal to both CDD and legal counsel asking for if they had any upcoming text amendments, some stuff that I wanted to get in the hopper with it. So it's been married up with this guest ranch proposal right now. But yeah, kind of I think the primary thing with what we're proposing here is the removal of our standard drawings from county code. Our standard drawings are currently were adopted into our county code. The last time they were updated was back in 2011, so 10 years ago. Those drawings are extremely outdated. Road department, local design, construction community doesn't use them. We all refer to pretty common ODOT standard drawings, which are kind of the industry standard here in Oregon. When I'm referring to standard drawings, I'm referring to pre-approved, stamped, engineered drawings that can be accommodated into a set of construction drawings that kind of show the details for typical features like sidewalks, curbs, storm drain inlets, guardrails, signs, a whole host of other things. So the current standard drawings the county have again, they're pretty outdated, and there are some real issues with some of them, in particular ones such as sidewalk and driveway type facilities that don't comply with current accessibility guidelines from the U.S. Access Board. So rather than going through a whole exercise to update those in our code, what we're doing with this is basically aligning with our current business practice, as well as how virtually every other road agency operates, which is not to necessarily codify those, to pull those out, to reference them in our code, but host those on our website and be able to update them as needed, as needs arise, basically on the fly. In most cases, it would just be eliminating our standard drawings and referring to again, those industry standard ODOT drawings that again, the construction community, the design community, developers are all much more accustomed to using. Beyond that, yeah, there were some other issues. There were some updates to sections of the code that was referencing specific sections in the Oregon standard specifications, and those aren't the current Oregon standard specifications. It was the standard specifications from, I believe, decades ago. That have since some of those chapters have changed. Yeah, there was also some references to some stuff that's now outdated in the Oregon administrative rules in regards to the Oregon Utility Notification Center and the phone numbers and the way you're supposed to contact them when you're for a one call when you're doing any kind of excavation. Some outdated insurance requirements that are in there. So ultimately, the intent here is to kind of streamline things. There could be a much bigger effort to kind of streamline and modernize our 1748, our construction standards. But these were kind of some glaring issues that we wanted to get resolved sooner rather than later.
So I see it, yeah, instead of referring to a specific drawing in a DCC title chapter, it says as determined by road department director. So that leaves it pretty open for the opportunity of the definition of what the standards are.
That's correct. And again, the intent would be that our standard drawings would come out of our code. The standard drawings that are still applicable to current times would be hosted on our website, updated as needed. But generally, for the remainder of these things, we'd be referring to Oregon standard drawings, which is essentially what Oregon revised statutes say you do in the absence of the county having an adopted standard.
So even if the standard or the standard document changes over time, you'll have a version that you're referring to as built, or whatever. You know, when you build something this year or 5 years from now, even if it changes, the reference document, you'll be able to go back to the one that was built to.
That's correct. I mean, yeah, there's certainly an archive of all of current and previous standard drawings, both county drawings, ODOT drawings, whatever agency or municipality we're talking about. But
yep, good.
And again, this kind of already aligns with the business practice we do right now. When somebody's submitted a set of road improvement plans for the road department, whether it's for a subdivision or a big site improvement, they're not usually referencing our standard drawings. They're usually referencing ODOT standard drawings because those are current and up to date. They meet current accessibility guidelines, other things. There's cases where those products are readily available off the shelf, and the things shown in our older standard drawings sometimes are not. So,
good. Any questions?
Well, interesting that we only have a couple, so.
So we'll see you on June 9th for this item.
Yes.
It's also worth noting that two versions of the ordinance have been included, the emergency and non-emergency, for your consideration.
Okay.
Is the, for the two operating guest ranches, is there a end date without this, is there sunset like imminent? Is it like urgently, time sensitive?
A good question, Commissioner. Do you want me to answer it, or got it? Please. They're already in existence, and so they're legal operating guest ranches. This is just the opportunity for new applications. And over the last decade or so that Brandon mentioned, each time that we've changed the sunset clause, it has just been to mirror what is in state law. State laws continue to impose a new sunset clause. We've continued to mirror that. This is one time where we didn't do that. It happened, I think, last session or the prior session, and we just haven't caught up with our housekeeping amendments. It's just a mirror of state law.
So doing it under emergency would just be to catch up faster with the state.
Correct. What it would do for the emergency was, rather than taking effect in 90 days, if we have somebody that's interested in applying within the 90 days, it would give them the opportunity to submit that application much earlier.
But you all didn't mention an imminent application.
There's an interested party.
Okay.
That we have somebody that they may be holding up on preparing that application, not certain if the board was going to, because we have local control over this, of whether we would remove the sunset clause so these provisions go back into effect, so that we can accept such applications.
So the emergency application of this sooner would give them more options sooner. Okay.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you. Great.
At this time, other items. Tom looks like he has something ready to go.
Is this the only executive session item?
Thank you. Oh, thank you. So, and I'll take this. So this is a proposal. So this is for us as a discussion about what we might do with this request. There's a request email. I think it might have been sent to all of us. Yeah, so all the commissioners requesting a proclamation in support of a National Gun Violence Awareness Day. So this is a proposal to maybe put this on our Wednesday board meeting. And it was just one of those spots where we all got the email, and now let's figure out what we're going to do with something like this. Is there support for doing that? And then the whereas is, I haven't read this, I just got it for the first time. We could definitely make it, we could edit it as a proclamation or just acknowledge, so this is a proclamation request. Any thoughts?
I mean, I'm very supportive of doing this. I think that when it comes to policy discussions about how you prevent gun violence, there's all sorts of ideas. But I hope that everyone can agree that gun violence happens and that there's significant impacts and in terms of lives lost and injuries and trauma and. So I believe that recognizing that is a very valuable thing.
And I actually met with the group that's behind this proclamation. They're not against the Second Amendment. They just feel like people need to do a better job of actually properly putting their guns out of the reach of children, etc., that shouldn't be getting their hands on.
Storage, yeah.
Well, yeah, so as I say, this is just an acknowledgement. We received a request for a proclamation. So there's support for putting it on our meeting on Wednesday. And I would, as I say, I'm just seeing this for the first time. I would possibly propose just shortening it ever so slightly. And I don't want to get too complicated here, but I'm just thinking that as I'm looking through here, maybe make it. I mean, as I say, I don't know who would have. If we want to debate what's in the proclamation, or if you want to give me the authority to slightly edit it, possibly.
I don't know whether, if this is a national coalition effort, whether they crafted their proclamation and they're really attached to
Well,
it or
this is
not.
our proclamation,
This is
Board of
for
Commissioners.
Central Oregon.
for
They've got
Deschutes
the line
County.
in
Yeah.
it for Central Oregon, so
Okay.
it's their personal one, I believe.
Okay.
And I don't want to make it too complicated, I'm just proposing that. How about if we work with Whitney and come up with a proposed?
I think that's a good idea.
Yeah, so that's, we can all do it, I'm just looking at it for the first time. Okay, so we'll put direction to this for Wednesday, and it'll be some version of what's been provided to us, if not exactly that. Okay, so that was just another item. Thank you very much, Tom, for bringing that. I've got a couple of notes about things I was doing, but any other things you prepared?
Not at this moment, no.
Commissioner Dare?
Well, I did go to the Sisters EDCO in-person event on Friday. There was some amazing.
Did you learn about chocolate?
I did, but I gave chocolate up
Oh.
January 2nd, so I've got my chocolate. It's amazing. Yeah, they moved over from Portland with his family, brought his business over, Holy Cacao, and it is so locally. It's a wonderful product. Thompson Guitar was one of the presenters, and they actually had someone who won a Grammy this year was playing with the Thompson Guitar. So they make approximately 15, 16 guitars a month. They have a 16-month wait to get your guitar, and it was wonderful. They're in a 2,000 square foot house in Sisters, so that was great. And then another one that I found fascinating was Kayak Tile. They're actually in Los Angeles in one of the premier tile distributors and Saks, and they have an amazing company. It was started by her grandmother, and her grandmother is 96 and still gets the mail. I mean, what a wonderful story. She works with her mom, and what they do is unbelievable. So if you want to use someone local, it's quite, it was exciting. So, yeah, they do amazing projects all over the world, and they make them all in this small little house in Sisters.
Right. That was Friday.
I was trying to attend virtually, but I didn't get the link. We didn't quite work out.
Technology, yeah.
Yeah.
I was able to attend the Lapine Chamber breakfast on Friday morning in person, so that was a good event. A lot of community energy right now, so the Lions Club spoke about their efforts, and then just kind of roundtable about the different items there. So that was, instead of the Friday morning meeting, that was the one thing I could have attended. Yesterday afternoon, so Sunday afternoon, it was community conversations with Deschutes Library. So this was an effort by some folks at the library. Elected officials are invited to come join and speak with community members. So you might be asked to join that also. Melanie Keebler from the city of Bend, Mayor Endicott from Redmond, and a couple other folks were there with about 20-something people total. So it's probably recorded. So it was just, and that was a full-on technology demonstration. I was able to do it remotely with a phone connection to the laptop.
Good stuff.
Not even at home. It's, yeah.
Wow.
So that worked out real well. There's East Cascade Works is our workforce consortium. COIC is the entity that does the WorkSource work. But they're asking for funding, so that's going to be a request. It was mentioned the ARPA dollars. I'm sure we're getting requests from many angles, but there's a period of time there, it looks like, where funding is changing. State legislature hasn't finalized what they're going to do, and there's really going to be a need to get people stabilized and back into the workforce. So there's no answers on that yet today, but there's a request out there that is going to be more formalized, just so we hear about what's going on there. So that's for workforce readiness. I did go to the Redmond Services area at the end of Antler for homeless on Friday. Saw some of the folks providing services. The shower truck, Mosaic van was there, spoke to some people. So that was a really good experience. Just, getting on the ground there and talking to folks. I was able to stay for a little bit more than an hour and really say hi to everybody that was providing services and everybody that was coming in too. So it was a really good relationship builder for me personally. I did dial into the EOCA meeting. It's a board meeting this morning, and I think Commissioner Adair was there too. So we didn't coordinate that one, and I don't know if we'll be able to get minutes from it or if you want to review it.
It was reviewed. They did record it, so.
Yeah, but I'm saying, it wasn't published for you and I both to be there. But we didn't even, not until the very end did they check a phone number or two, did we know we were both there. So that one was not coordinated. But as I say, it was a legislative update for Eastern Oregon counties. There was a committee created for, I think it was writing a letter to get engaged with the 30 by 30 discussion from the federal government, 30% of land by 2030, and some discussions about the rural, the RACs, the Rural Advisory Councils, and how they're engaged. And it's interesting to hear that. In fact, you must have experience with that.
BLM racks or other racks?
I think, well, when they say RAC, I assume it's possibly the SRS dollars and the Rural Advisory Committees. So it's different. I don't have a lot of connection with it here, but it's mentioned there. Some Eastern Oregon counties mention it, like when we were at the RAC meeting. So I almost kind of need to resolve why it looks so different for us and other smaller counties, or I don't know.
Farther out east, when they talk about RACs, it's typically BLM convened bodies. And there is one that covers, the whole Prineville BLM district. But, we're basically on the edge of it. We're like the corner of it, of the Prineville BLM district. We're not really in the center of it. It extends way, the John Day River and a bunch of other areas. So if you don't hear about that particular RAC very much, it's I think it's probably because we're fairly peripheral to that area.
Yeah, as I say, the terminology comes up like, when we did this at the RAC. So I just didn't have a reference point for what it really is. As I say, I think of it as title items from SRS and
Right.
choices for funding, once a year meeting kind of thing. So maybe there's an education part there for me.
Yeah, so those Forest Service racks, they would be active if there was SRS dollars flowing right now, but as far as I know, they're not. So.
Well, and that'd be interesting just to hear from somebody in Eastern Oregon and County to explaining what that is. So, as I say, just something I picked up and talking about. That's.
So tomorrow, Commissioner DeBonne, I think you have the 6:45 call, because I had it last Tuesday. And I did meet with Mandy Seeley last Thursday morning. Mandy's actually on a state committee for homelessness. And there are 83 homeless in Sisters. She said a lot of them that she knows are working. And of the 83, 12 of them are kids. So apparently, hopefully 2 of those kids are going to be moving into a home in Tollgate shortly. So that's the good news. And then Thursday afternoon for the community that I remember said something to me about Hawthorne Station. The design of Hawthorne Station is being worked on. They are trying to bring all the buses in off the street, which will be so important and so critical. And there is funding that they're receiving from the state. So hopefully that will be done sooner rather than later, because I know it's quite a congested area and a lot of issues are going on. So that was my meeting on Thursday afternoon.
Well, I did actually think of one thing that would probably be worth sharing is, so along the lines of potential American Rescue Plan allocations, I talked to John McLeod of Mount Bachelor about their biomass project, and he told me that they are actively trying to assemble their financing right now to proceed with construction of that project. And he sent over to me a PowerPoint presentation that they put together to pursue a federal wood innovation grant, but then they learned that they had asked for $1.5 million and there was only $2 million total available. So they were going to get bumped out of that cycle. But he definitely said that they were picturing going to construction within the next year and a half or 2 years, which would fall within our ARP window. And so I'll send they're going to put together something a little bit more customized for us, but I can send, at minimum, I can send that PowerPoint presentation over to Greg to put in our file as a placeholder.
Great. Yeah, and I mentioned biomass, so I guess Thursday afternoon at 4 o'clock was the commission chairs with the governor's office, so it was Leah Horner, and it was Kelly Minty Morris and James Williams from Lake County, so Klamath Lake, and Judge Crawford dialed in. So not everybody was there, but I was there also. So that was, I was able to share, I think I sent an email, which I CC'd everybody from Wade at Three Creeks Brewing, asking for self-testing for masks.
Yes.
And the governor's office said, no, we just can't get there yet. So, but we may soon, so we're working on that. But I mentioned biomass there specifically too, just to kind of get that buzz going also. It was mentioned on the City Club with the city managers last Thursday also, if you heard that.
Steve.
Yeah, oh yeah, he went right down that path, so I was like, yay.
Yeah, they've been talking about it for a long time.
But I mean, that's it makes sense. And as I say, what I see is when the Lapine project was being discussed, I think it was like 12 cents a kilowatt hour of wholesale rates after you're all in and building it, and how much you need to spend or sell it for the next 20 years. And we pay $7 at our house. So I mean, there's just this big disconnect. So what did somebody tell me a long time ago? It's all about the power purchase contract.
It's all about the power purchase.
Yeah.
Well, it's all about the power purchase contract, and then it's all about how cheaply you can get the fuel into the facility, and making those two things connect. Yeah.
But we've got mountains of solid waste being delivered by the citizens to transfer stations right now.
We sure do. Let's hope that we do.
Okay, so anything else in other items? Seeing none, we do have executive session today, and we will step into executive session under ORS 19266 discussed.
This meeting is being recorded.
Well, we must be paying extra for that, don't you think?
Almost Orwellian.
Zoom might just be evolving every day to better serve our needs.
Okay, so anything else? Meeting adjourned.